All we're saying is you can't carry a gun in town.
I have two guns, one for each of.
You're a daisy if you do. 4 words, 1 grin, and 30 years of fans who still can't get through a family barbecue without quoting it. Tombstone is one of those rare movies where every single line seems to have a life of its own outside the film. Printed on t-shirts, screamed at football games, whispered before somebody does something reckless. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Buried underneath the mustache, the gun smoke, and the one-liners is a story about the making of this film that's arguably wilder than anything that happens on screen. And at the center of it is Sam Elliott, the man who played Virgil Earp with a voice like gravel rolling down a canyon, quietly sitting on a secret about this production for years. So what exactly did Sam Elliott let slip about Tombstone that reframes the entire movie? Stick with us, because by the end of this, you're going to watch this film completely differently. Rewind to the early 1990s. Westerns were considered box office poison. Studios had mostly given up on the genre after a string of expensive flops throughout the 1980s. So when word got out that not one, but 2 separate Wyatt Earp movies were being rushed into production at the same time, the industry treated it less like a competition and more like a curiosity. Nobody expected either one to matter much. One of those productions was Tombstone. On paper, it had everything going for it. A script written by Kevin Jarre, the same writer behind Glory, and a cast that reads like a fantasy draft of tough guy actors. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp, Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday, Sam Elliott as Virgil Earp, Bill Paxton as Morgan Earp, Powers Booth as the menacing Curly Bill Brocious, Michael Biehn as the unhinged Johnny Ringo, Dana Delaney as Josephine Marcus, and, tying the whole thing together, the unmistakable narration of screen legend Robert Mitchum. It should have been a slam dunk. Instead, it very nearly fell apart before a single frame made it to theaters. The film dramatizes real history, the tension in 1880s Tombstone, Arizona, the gunfight near the OK Corral, and the bloody retaliation that followed, known as the Earp Vendetta Ride. Audiences responded. The film pulled in over $70 million at the box office against a modest budget, and more importantly, it refused to fade away. Decades later, people are still rewatching it, still quoting it, still discovering it for the first time. But the version that made it to theaters is only half the story of what actually happened behind the camera. Kevin Jarre wasn't just the writer of Tombstone, he was originally supposed to direct it too. This was meant to be his big directorial debut, the project that would prove he could do more than write brilliant scripts, he could also bring them to life on set. It didn't go that way. Jarre's vision for the film was sprawling and detail-obsessed. He wanted every costume, every prop, every mannerism to feel like it had been lifted straight out of the 1880s. Admirable, but also incredibly slow to execute. As production dragged and the shot list piled up, the studio grew nervous. Barely a month into filming, Jarre was removed from the director's chair entirely. It was a gut punch to the cast, several of whom had signed on specifically because of Jarre's script and his vision for the film. Michael Biehn, a close friend of Jarre's, has said he genuinely considered walking away from the project altogether. He's spoken about feeling that the replacement director, George P. Cosmatos, didn't fully understand or respect what Jarre had originally written. Cosmatos, best known for directing Rambo, First Blood Part 2 and Cobra, came in with an entirely different energy, fast-paced, blunt, and far less patient with the slow-burn character work Jarre had built into the script. He immediately scrapped a large chunk of what had already been filmed and pushed for bigger, louder set pieces, starting the movie with an explosive massacre sequence and ramping up the action at the climax. That shift in tone didn't sit well with everyone, and it set the stage for a secret that wouldn't come out for another 2 decades. Here's where the story takes a turn most casual fans have never heard. 4 years after Tombstone was released, the credited director was George P. Cosmatos. That's the name on the poster. That's the name in the history books. But according to Kurt Russell, that's not really who was calling the shots on set. In 2013, nearly 10 years after Cosmatos had passed away, Russell finally opened up in an interview with True West magazine. His claim, Cosmatos had essentially been brought on as a kind of stand-in, a director-shaped shield the studio could point to, while Russell himself quietly ran the day-to-day filmmaking. Russell has said he was the one making the tough calls about pacing, dialogue, and structure, working late into the night reshaping scenes, all while letting Cosmatos serve as the public face of the production. Why keep it quiet for so long? Russell has explained that he made a personal decision not to say anything publicly until after Cosmatos had died, out of respect. And he kept that promise for years. Val Kilmer has backed up the broad strokes of Russell's account, saying that Russell was, in practice, directing far more than his credit suggested, though Kilmer was also careful